Hello dear friends and welcome to the Early Music Podcast. My name is Darina Ablogina. The European Early Music Association, REMA, is currently going through a process to encourage transition for its members, more sustainability, inclusion, diversity, access for audiences and artists. Early music today embraces a multitude of perspectives, breathing new life into age-old compositions while challenging the boundaries of what we once understood about this era. In this season, we will discuss how diversity, be it cultural, musical, or interpretive, has played a key role in shaping the evolution of early music. In today's episode, we are going to talk about diversity in the historical perspective. It's interesting to consider how diversity plays a role in early music today. I'm going to talk with 3 female leaders and artistic directors and their inspiration from the female figures of the past times.
Yeah, I'm Hannah Ely and I run a vocal ensemble called Fieri Consort, and we're based in the UK. Our repertoire is mainly Italian and English madrigals, which in terms of range means that there are a lot of men on stage, and so there are a lot of men in my ensemble.
In case of Hannah, she and her ensemble were working on the program dedicated to Maddalena Casulana, who was an Italian composer, lutenist and singer of the late Renaissance. She was the first female composer to have had a whole book of her music printed and published in the history of Western music. Actually, I wanted to ask you, what does diversity mean to you?
Diversity is a very big word. To me, in the UK, I'm going to talk about my specific perspective. Right now, we're really focused on having an aesthetic diversity. So that means on stage, there being a clear representation of our society. There's not just the gender diversity, there's also the ethnicity diversity. And again, these traditional ways of singers coming up to being professional is a very narrow representation of society in the UK. It's not really diversity, and that they're not necessarily representing a part of society. So we're not actually doing what we're trying to do. We're just ticking the boxes potentially for a funding or for our own gratitude, which is more of a hindrance than a help.
Hannah's solution would be a tool of collaboration that we could use in our everyday life and work to bring our artistic outcome onto another level.
The more productive way is collaboration, and I've seen ensembles, for instance, Holland Baroque, do a lot of collaborations with people from different countries, completely different musical backgrounds. That brings in a different audience, and I think it has to be not just diverse on stage, but diverse in the audience.
With my next guest, we are going to travel through the Finnish medieval landscape.
I'm Aino Peltomaa, I'm from Finland. First there is Ensemble Gamut, where we combine medieval music with improvisation and electronics and folk. Then there is the trio Peltomaa Frane Perkola. We are in search of new ways to perform early music because almost all my projects are, the inspiration is medieval music, but then we do creative projects around it. So with Peltomaa Frane Perkola, for example, Harmen Franje is a jazz piano player from Amsterdam, a very male world, a jazz world. And Mikko Perkola is a gamba player and has electronics. And then I would like to mention my third ensemble, Amor Seu, that is actually related to this theme in a way, maybe in the most strongly way, that actually was formed because this gamba player who has running the festival BQ Vanta in Finland, I just saw a Facebook post of him saying, how can we build festival programs with more gender diversity? We started talking, and my first idea was to have this like sort of medieval Spice Girls, unique, very different personalities, colorful different personalities coming together, but with the female voiced lyrical love poetry.
Where do you start your research, and also have you considered diversity in terms of geographical borders?
For example, in my latest program with Ensemble Gamut, when we are exploring the earliest surviving manuscripts of the music that came to Finland, Finland was part of Sweden, then of course it's religious, but then we have a very strong oral tradition and very strong actually female leaders in the rune singing, like a poet singing in Finland. We have the Brigittine chant, which is a famous saint all over Europe, which is the female theme I've been researching, gathering her chant.
And this repertoire, what is it dedicated to?
Mary, Cantus Sororum, the Song of the Sisters. It's a cycle of chant, and I've been also combining this chant with the rune singing of the oral tradition of the Eastern Finland, where the sort of similar themes
Staged.
Fanny Davies was a British pianist who was particularly admired in her performances of Beethoven, Schumann and Brahms. That's how Bernard Shaw described Fanny's playing in 1891. It was the most successful feat of interpretation and execution he has ever heard.
I'm Laura Granero. I'm a forte pianist, harpsichordist and pianist, and I'm the artistic director of the Fanny Davies Ensemble, also co-artistic director of La Nouvelle Athènes, a center for historical pianos in Paris. We pay tribute to Fanny Davies. She was a British pianist born in 1861. She studied with Clara Schumann, going to study with Liszt, but she didn't like him at all, so she decided to go to Frankfurt and study with Clara Schumann.
Having in mind our talk with Hannah Ely, she's coming from the United Kingdom. She was talking about this strong traditional approach in education, even nowadays. I was wondering, what was it at the time to be a female pianist?
Being a female pianist back in that time was quite difficult, because you would either get married or you would have a career, but then you would have to be independent. In her case, she was homosexual. She lived with her partner until she died. In that time, it was quite difficult because women in England, she came back to England, and women in England couldn't teach in the high institutions, only as assistants or doing substitutions. And that meant, of course, financial instability. And of course, touring in that time was not just taking one flight and being back after a couple of days. It was just out for several years. So it was quite difficult, and that's why she ended up being poor and sick and broken. She was also in contact with the early music movement, or the revival, of course. And she also tried to program a lot of Baroque music, Virginia Liszt's, etc. Yeah, and she was also someone who cared a lot about diversity. From the gender perspective, for example, she performed many pieces by women composers, by Rebecca Clark, but also by Clara Schumann and many others. She was even president for a couple of years of the Society for Women Musicians of this.
There was a society for women musicians.
Yes, exactly.
Tell about it.
Well, I haven't researched a lot, but I think the idea was precisely to encourage the women be able to pursue a career. For example, Fanny Davies wrote several articles even for women magazines.
What would be your advice to musicians who are thinking a lot about equality, diversity, inclusivity, how to navigate in the early music field nowadays?
In a way, the things are developing so slowly. Stories like the one of Fanny Davies can also inspire us. And I think having the conversations and also being very daring to have projects that go beyond just the standard and normative, and in which you... Well, in my case, it's about giving visibility to a performer of the past that was queer.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to our episode. Please find all the additional information in the description box. I wish you all the best. Bye.